Welcome to Jazz Piano Daily. This is number 118, and today we're going to be going through a tritone substitution example for the great standard, There Is No Greater Love. All right, so let's take a look. Here is the original. Okay, so basically, let me go through the voicings first before we move on. Notice I'm utilizing this chordal in the right hand. I'm going to be talking about chordal voicings very soon, so look for a future lesson on that. Root 7 chord shell in the left hand. Another chordal voicing here in the right hand, root 7 in the left hand. Again, like I said, if you don't understand chordal voicings, just look for a future Jazz Piano Daily lesson on that. There's A flat 7, sharp 11. Here's a cluster voicing. Right, we will talk about those as well. Right, 9, 3, and sharp 11, and then down to my G7. And you can play all the notes of the G7, or really what it is in the music is this is actually tied over. All right, so I'll put that in. All right, so the chord that we are going to do a tritone substitution on is going to be right here, this E flat 7. Right, we're going to substitute that E flat 7. Now, before I tell you what it is, if you want to pause the video and kind of use this as a little quiz for yourself, what would the substitution of E flat 7 be? Remember, what you want to do is you're going to go a tritone away from that E flat. So the tritone interval away. So remember, the tritone interval, you could find it by going to the 5th and then flatting the 5th. Sharp 11, sharp 4, halfway point in the octave, however you want to think about it, all right, you want to find where that tritone is. All right, you ready? The tritone is A7, okay? Now, the other thing, too, that's helpful to know is to remember that when I'm trying to find the tritone of E flat, I could also look to that next chord, and I know that it's probably going to be a half step above that chord, which it is. All right, so now let's take a listen to this with this tritone sub. Oops, sorry. Oh, you know, also let me tie this over as well, because that should be tied over. Again, in the music here, if you're following along with the music, I'm taking a little bit of liberty with the rhythm of the melody. What's written is... but I'm going to jazz it up a little bit. Add a little bit of syncopation to it. Anyway, that A7 sounds really good. I really like the A7 on this tune. I love that tritone substitution. And typically when playing this song, this is what I play. I will play the A7. There's also another thing. Notice what's happening here. You see this great descending pattern that you have going on here. The B flat major to A7 to A flat 7 to G, right? You get this nice, you could even get away with, you could almost get away with playing that first B flat major 7th as a dominant 7th chord, even though you end up going back to that major 7th. But the major 7th is sitting on beat 2, so it's kind of getting buried in there. Anyway, though, I'm keeping it as the B flat major 7th. All right, so again, B flat major 7, A7, A flat 7, and then G7. Now you'll notice on the A7, what did I do? I played a root 3/7. Well, Willie, why'd you play a root 3/7? It just felt like it, right? And it just kind of fills out the chord just a little bit more. I could take out that 3rd because I'm already playing the 3rd in the right hand. Now, can I do that 3rd here in the A flat? You betcha I can. I can do that in G7 as well. But as I start to play these 3rds down, right, we get into what we call lower interval limits, L-I-L, lower interval limits. And that means that there are certain limits on how low you can play specific intervals. Like a 3rd, like right about in there, right? You know, like a major 2nd, forget it, that's too low, like really, it's like kind of like up in there, right? But octaves, you can play octaves all the way down, right? So it just depends on the interval that you're applying. Fourths, right? Too low. Still too low. Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But if I, right? Hear how that sounds muddy? Those are lower interval limits. All right, so anyway, I put the third in there. I like the sound of it. Now, you might also be wondering, hey, why are you only doing one chord for a tritone substitution? Why don't you show us like the whole tune, right? Well, first of all, this is Jazz Piano Daily, right? So I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information on one day. But there's a second very important reason for that, and that is you don't have to do tritone substitutions all over the place. You know, you're better off to pick one or two in a song rather than trying to do substitutions over every single chord. I'll share a quick anecdote with you. Years ago, I did a gig in Newport. It was a wedding, and the leader of the band passed out these charts that he wrote reharmonizations of Beatles tunes, and he harmonized every single beat. The band had a heck of a time trying to play it, and second of all, it sounded like garbage because it was so overly harmonized. Every note was harmonized that it was no longer sounded like the tune anymore. Right? And I remember the band kind of grumbling about it, and for good reason, because it really kind of took away from the music. So remember, just a well-placed tritone substitution, just one or two in a song goes a long way. So, next question, now the A flat 7, let's say just for fun that we want to do a tritone substitution of that. Well, what's a tritone substitution? It would be a D7. So then replace the A flat. D7, right? Then G7. Yeah, sure, absolutely, right? So, and now you might even say, hey, wait a second, now let's reverse engineer that A7 and go back to E flat 7, then D7, and then G7, right? So you see how you can flip-flop back and forth on those dominants. You could do a tritone or go back to the regular dominant motion, right? So it's all based on that interval of a tritone. So on A, it's A or E flat. So I could think of that A chord right here, right? So this orange box or red box, however you see that color, you can think of this as an A chord or an E flat chord. Either one will work, right? As long as it works with the melody. In this case, it does. And then what about this next one? The A flat 7. That could either be an A flat or a D. What about the G7? That could either be a G or a D flat. Now, why would D flat 7 probably not work so well when the melody note is D, right? We've talked about that before, right? That flat 9, yeah, it's a little tight there. Let's try it. Right? The flat 9? Not really, all right? So G7, keep G7 the way that it is. But you can play around with this A flat 7 and make that a D7, and then you could make that A7 go back to the original E flat 7. So the best way of learning your tritone substitutions is play around with them. Have fun. You got 3 examples now that you can use as a springboard. What can you come up with, right? So anyway, I'll see you guys in the next lesson. I'm going to show you a cool trick with 2-5-1s. To get the first 45 pages of music for free, just go back to jazzpianodaily.com. If you liked the video, please be sure to click the like button and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. To watch the rest of the lessons in this series, just click on the playlist to the right of this arrow. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.